All right, so the regular season portion of this project has concluded, and because if for no other reason than I did an update at the quarter mark and the halfway mark as well, the halfway point of the season, I thought I would do one here to show what ended up happening. Again, this was a 32 game regular season, and so I thought I'd go through each team in the standings, maybe say a little bit about each one, not really too much. I haven't really prepared notes for this, just basically going off the cuff with what I have in my head because I figured if I had prepared something, this video would be even longer. And so I don't want it to be too long, but I do want to sort of look back on what happened here. During the regular season part of it, and then get on with the postseason, which I'm quite eager to get started. Anyway, in this I had it was a 12-team league, and I had two conferences. The first being the Makita Conference. For Stan Mikita, obviously, and Henri Richard and Howie Meeker comprised the two divisions in that conference. I put three teams in each division. Again, it was a 12-team league, so I guess I'll go by division in order. So the first division there, Buffalo, got off to a great start. Don Luce got off to a fantastic start. It looked like he would even win the scoring race early on. It was really only for a few games, though. Looking back, he had a couple. I want to say he had like a 4 goal game in Buffalo's first or second game of the season, and was sitting on like 8 or 9 or 10 points after a few games, something like that. So really, when you average it out, what he would have attained over the next 29, you'd be looking at like 23 or 24 points or whatever for Don Luce. And so really, not that far off average historically. And that's another thing too that I've said it a few times, but I think it bears repeating here. I was not comparing their numbers to what they got historically, simply because they were playing a very different set of opponents. I mean, the only teams from the same season were the 83 Bruins and Chicago Blackhawks and the 75 Sabres and Kings. But other than that, these were teams playing, from different eras and different seasons. And so you can't really expect them to perform exactly as they did historically in the season when they would have had expansion teams, opponents, and things like that. So so Buffalo, some aberrations, some interesting, I guess, little things, although I'm going to show scoring leaders as well. But Gilbert Perreault, 33 points in 32 games. Decent, a little below average for him, but again, against, some of these 11 opponents, 11 other teams were pretty strong defensively. So Buffalo didn't get quite as many opportunities maybe against some of their opponents in this competition as they would have historically. Anyway, Buffalo finished with 33 points. Somewhat disappointing for them because at the start they looked like they were the real world beater in this competition. They looked like they beat up on Winnipeg, who they see in the first round. More on that soon. Vancouver fell out of the playoffs, actually, the final game. And that's another thing too, and I'm contemplating whether or not I might just, if I say enough about it in this video, I might just include it in the title. But I want to do a video talking about short seasons and recommending short seasons over trying to do a complete replay of a full season. Why not just take every team and have every team play a couple of home and away games against one another and call it a season? Because I know, I completed a full season project with Mike Owens Quick Play Pro Hockey, but it was half the teams at 6 and about twice the games at 60, so about the same length. And I know by the time that I got to the end of that was 180 games. This one was 192. I was definitely ready for playoffs at that time. I really felt ready for playoffs, and I feel ready for playoffs again here and now. So Buffalo, Vancouver, Washington, somewhat disappointing, 10, 16, and 6, I guess, for them. Maybe not all that surprising, but nonetheless disappointing. They did, however, finish 3-1-1 in their final 5. They went 3-0-1 in their final 4. I think what benefited them actually was at the tail end of the schedule, which again, the schedule was a bit loose, but they benefited from having several home games toward the end, although you couldn't have told them that in the first half of the season, because I want to say they played 8 or 9 games at home before they had their first win. So again, I'm going on thoughts and memory and feelings here. I've not prepared notes. Everything that I say will be at least close to accurate, but just kind of wanted to go off the cuff with this. So anyway, that was the Henri division. Again, Buffalo started off spectacularly and then sort of fell into mediocrity there mid-season. I guess maybe strength of schedule picked up or something. Vancouver fell out of the playoffs literally on the final. Well, it's because of the result of the final game, actually, that they, had the Quebec Nordiques lost that game or even tied, Vancouver would have been in the playoffs. So yeah, that was the 75 Sabres. Then I mean the Henri division was goodness, I can't even get my own order straight. Was the 75 Buffalo Sabres, the 1992 Vancouver Canucks, and the 86 Washington Capitals. And I know when I did the sorting hat video, the Harry Potter sorting hat for these Mike Owens Quick Play Pro Hockey teams, this 12 team redemption league. I actually was pretty satisfied. I thought that I had pretty balanced divisions in terms of era and also in terms of overall roster strength. But this project proved me wrong. I did sort of, I mean, it's hindsight's 2020. I did sort of think that the Howie division, the Howie Meeker division, would be the strongest of the four. I mean, I wasn't that surprised, and I think someone had mentioned that this it might have been Mike Owens himself, actually. I mean, he designed the game and everything like that, and a little more familiar with the eras too than I am in terms of live. I read and I look back, but you know, two of these three teams are a little before my time, and for one of them, I would have been 2 years old at the time, so a few years away, really, from I don't know, pure, I guess, more bona fide hockey fandom. Though I have pictures as a baby in '99 Oilers Gretzky clothes, but anyway, Gretzky attire so, as an infant. So the New York Rangers, they ended up finishing first overall, and it didn't look that way. I want to say early and midway through the season, it didn't look like they would. They really did come on strong late, however, and although their toughest competition, and actually too another thing too. So the Henri Richard division, the teams finished with a combined 88 points, just to show the relative strength of the divisions. The Howie Meeker division, 111 points. So 88 points between these three teams and 111 points in this division. So even when these teams were playing elsewhere, they were beating up the rest of the league pretty good. New York with 39, Winnipeg with 38, again, only because they lost that final regular season game to the Quebec Nordiques. Did the Winnipeg Jets not finish ahead of the New York Rangers for first overall, and the consequences of that loss could be somewhat dire. More on that soon. St. Louis, I don't know, with 34 points, which would have been good for first in the Colby division. So really, I'm talking about Winnipeg, and you can see there too the top wild card spots, because the way that I laid it out, wild cards could come from any division. Although, given how the teams finished, I think if I were to do this project over again, something like this, I mean, with just a 12-team setup, I don't know. I mean, divisions and conferences are fun, and being able to play around with parameters, I guess, a little bit like that. But I think a straight 1-8 for the 12 teams, a straight 1-8. I don't know. It would have been fairer, I guess, if nothing else, for Winnipeg and St. Louis, because St. Louis is first overall in this division, but instead they had to settle for third in the Howie Meeker. So again, 111 points between the three teams. And then we look at the Howard-Chuck Conference for Dale Howard-Chuck, the Colby Cave Division, and the Joey Moss Division. In the Cave Division, it was Boston finishing first overall. Hartford gave them a good run for a little while. I really do feel like Hartford is one of those teams that fell off and faltered late. Maybe they were playing a little above their heads early on. They were just getting the right rolls and the right results. A lot of ties also hurt them a lot. I don't do overtime, and so who knows how many of those ties would have been wins. I do 60 and done. And some teams too, like LA 75, Montreal 70, they would have played in the era of no regular season overtime anyway. But Hartford, as you can see as well, something else that I meant to sort of hone in on here was teams that did really well at home and on the road. So Hartford, really, they did very well at the Al Red Sox Fan Orange Julius Victoria's Secret, complex, megaplex center, or whatever, as Ron Chuckett says so well, as he says best. The road really killed them, and also too, they almost made the playoffs, but the fact that they are tied for the worst goal differential in the league with 25 below, that's tied with Washington also with a minus 25 for the worst goal differential in this competition. I'm kind of glad that Hartford, for that alone, if nothing else, didn't make the playoffs. I don't know, as odd as that might sound. Los Angeles, I think really what hurt them is just they couldn't produce offense. They had a lot of games, a lot of edged out 3-2, 2-1 type losses if you look at how things transpired. And then also at home, they couldn't pick up the wins at the then Great Western Forum that they would have played in. Pretty sure it would have been the Great Western Forum in 75. They would have been moved into it by that point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't get enough offense, and they didn't get the wins at home. So that's really what hurt them in the long run. Whereas a team like Boston, relatively even at home and on the road. and I guess 87 points total for this division. So what did I say? 88, 87. This one here was the second strongest division, the Joey Moss division, helped in large part by Montreal. Montreal very strong early and even midway through the season, and then down the stretch they went 0-6-1 in their final seven. They lost six straight before finally finishing with a tie to the Los Angeles Kings. It was a tie game there, and so so a little better at home, I guess, than on. Not really, about equal at home and on the road. Not the most offensive team. But yeah, really, I mean, it was a little misleading looking. They were 17-5-3 at one point, I think 25 games into it. And then that was, yeah, they went 0-6-1 after that. Chicago with a record of 14-15-3, a little worse at home than on the road, and a negative goal differential. I think there are two teams in the playoffs with a negative differential, if I'm not mistaken. Not Buffalo, though. The other is, Quebec, right beneath them. So the Nordiques, yeah, on to the Nordiques, and I meant to shuffle through these two as I was going: 72 New York, 85 Winnipeg, 81 St. Louis, 83 Boston, 87 Hartford, 75 Los Angeles. Talked about 70 Montreal and 83 Chicago. So on to the 95 Quebec Nordiques. This was a big surprise to me because certainly through the first half of the season when they were sitting with a record of 3-12-1, because you can go back and watch or listen to video prior to starting out this project when I had just the 12 teams picked. I sort of figured that they would be up there with the 72 Rangers and the 75 Sabres, and they would be one of the favorites to sort of dominate in this competition or whatever. They do have the worst normalization of all the teams, 15, but I mean most of the teams it's only 16, so I don't even think you can factor that in. Who knows? I mean, some of the close games, maybe that was responsible for another scoring chance or two for the other side that they otherwise would not have had. So I mean, it's possible, but yeah, Quebec on the final day of the regular season, and to be fair as well, they did go, you can see there, so they finished 14-17-1, which means that they went 11-5-0 in the second half. So they were 3-12-1 in the first half, 11-5-0 in the second half. I think for that alone, you could say even with the negative goal differential and everything that they are pretty deserving. They'd want to do a little better on the road. Their visitor defense is terrible on the road, whereas it's good at home. Quite good at home, but yeah, pretty bad on the road there with the 20. For visitor defense in this game, you want low. You want high here and you want low there. High offense, low defense. Anyway, so 4-11-1 on the road, 10-6-0 at Le Colisée, including again that big, epic, awesome win that they got. I'm going to say it here: the Titanic battle with the photo finish over the 85 Winnipeg Jets in the final game of the regular season. You can watch that rolled out. I did not make that up. That was a really good, just fantastic back and forth game where it looked like one team would crush and then another would come back, and it was just a really good game. That's basically what I have to say for the regular season. I'll look a bit at scoring leaders, but before I do that, and I'll just try to do that briefly, on to the playoffs matchup. So what it means that Quebec has sort of leapfrogged over Hartford and Vancouver, same number of points but more wins. All of those teams finished with 29 points. I use wins as the primary tiebreaker. I couldn't even tell you actually Quebec's record against Vancouver and Hartford, whether it's winning or losing. Had they had the same number of wins, I would have looked at that, but Quebec with the 14th win there, that counts for something, I think. So unfortunately, they will have to cede home ice advantage to the New York Rangers in the opening round, but given how they did in the first half, they should be good and happy just to be there. And I mean, who knows? I mean, they're pretty terrible on the road, but if they can eke one out on the road, and then let's say that they do really good in all three of their 7 games at Le Colisée, where again they had a record of 10-6, then actually that makes me curious to go back and check the Rangers' record at home. So the Rangers actually pretty similarly good there in the end. I think they were weak at one or the other at one point. It might have been at Madison Square Garden where they didn't do as well. Best goal differential, by the way, with a plus 35 there for the Rangers. Winnipeg with 135 had more goals than anyone else, helped by Dale Hawerchuk, who won the scoring title. So we'll get to that as well. Quebec Nordiques and New York Rangers will play one another in the opening round. Quebec with a wild card 4 slot and New York with the division winner 1. So highest division winner versus lowest wild card. This I feel bad about because technically Winnipeg finished even ahead of Montreal if you're because they had the same record, but Winnipeg went 2-0 against the Canadiens over that time. But because the Canadiens are in the right division, they have benefited from that. So, and I don't want to go back and change it now and just do the straight 1-8 where Winnipeg would be ahead of Montreal. So you're going to get the Joey Division rivals with the 83 Chicago Blackhawks and Montreal Canadiens. Chicago won at least one game. I remember pretty cleanly and pretty decisively over Montreal. I know Montreal has at least a couple of wins. I'm quite sure against Chicago as well, though. So I'm going to say Montreal had a winning record against them. I think actually when I roll out playoffs, that's one of the things that I will do to get ready for that is find out the team's exact records against one another. Before before I actually roll them out in the playoffs. Boston and St. Louis. So it's the 2019 Stanley Cup Final that went 7 games. But here it's the 83 Boston Bruins against the 81 St. Louis Blues. This should be a pretty awesome matchup as well. It's for whatever reason, because the playoffs shifted a lot elsewhere. This matchup has actually been pretty etched in for a little while here. St. Louis and Boston, they seem kind of destined to meet one another. Also sort of locked in for a bit, though, was Winnipeg against Buffalo. This one I feel pretty terrible about because, again, rules are rules, and I set them up that way prior to the season. I'm going to be like the actual NHL and just be a stick in the mud and not change them now. But you have the 85 Jets that finished with 38 points, only good for the top wild card spot because they shared a division with division winner and first overall in the Redemption League, New York Rangers from 1972. But the Winnipeg Jets and the Buffalo Sabres, again, this division winner 4 and wild card 1. That's right. Buffalo, because they have fewer victories than Boston. I just had this thought about 33 points, and had I screwed everything up, I knew there was a reason Boston was ahead of them. Anyway, Buffalo, too many ties. So Winnipeg and Buffalo, there is a game that I video recorded and put on this channel where Buffalo absolutely destroys Winnipeg like 9-2. Sure, they have a winning record against Winnipeg. I don't think there was another 9-2 game. But yeah, this really hurts Winnipeg. And I think kind of similar to Quebec. If I'm not mistaken, Winnipeg's a little defensively challenged. On the road, visitor defense 22, which should play right into Buffalo's hands. So this is a terrible matchup for the Winnipeg Jets. Though, to be fair, they did better than expected. I know Mike Owens himself commented, I forget it verbatim especially because I'm on the spot I'm going to, but surprised and impressed positively at how Winnipeg performed in this. But man, this is a terrible opening round matchup for the Winnipeg Jets. And it's going to be a shame, actually, that these two teams won't make it to the semifinals. But I mean, if you look at these matchups, there should be really good semifinals and final for this competition. And I guess one other thing that I'll touch on briefly here, try not to make this, too much more than, say, 20 minutes or whatever, but Dale Hawerchuk, who, again, literally in the final game, Federico had 42 points. Vic Hadfield finished with 41, though he was in the scoring race lead for quite a while. This averages out. You can multiply it by 2.5. So Hawerchuk, for instance, he'd be looking at about 107, 108 points. Federico would be about 105. Hadfield just about right in line with real life, actually, for his totals. Projects to about 55 goals and just over 100 points. Jean Rattel may be a little goal heavy there, but again, had I played a full 80-game season, or 80-ish game season, 70-ish, 80-ish games, and also had the correct opponents for that historic season for them, things could have been different. Barry Peterson there came on pretty strong late to finish with 37 points. Brad Park, interestingly, had about as many goals as assists. I'm not even sure if in 72 Park, I mean, he was no offensive defenseman, but I don't think he would have had too many more than 14 goals in 1972 without knowing it offhand. But again, little aberrations like that. For the most part, things here, I mean, this is kind of, had I gone through the cards beforehand and picked out some, who I thought could contend in the scoring race, a lot of these same names would come up. Dunlop was a bit of a surprise just because I didn't really know about him. He wasn't on my radar. It's interesting, too, I go back to the 60s Habs teams, and that's kind of actually playing Paradise is where I first learned. I'm like Bobby Rousseau. Again, I'm a Habs fan. I know all these legendary names from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. What happened to Bobby Rousseau? Why? I'm not saying that he is John Beliveau, but why isn't he sort of included in the discussion as like a very good teammate of some of those guys, if nothing else. Like I know for whatever reason he just wasn't quite on my radar. I read Lions in Winter, but I was like 9 or 10 years old when I read it. Probably read it at least once or more than once, but I hadn't touched the book in decades. I'm sure Rousseau's name comes up in Lions in Winter, the one that was written after the Habs won the cup that came out after the Habs won the cup back in '93. Anyway, so you have Brad Park, Rod Gilbert, Steve Larmer. Larmer with 20 goals. Again, bit of a... But a lot of this stuff, too, had you played the entire season, a lot of this stuff would have leveled off and out, I think. Rene Robert, may he rest in peace, just finishing just outside of the top 10 and just having passed on recently. Brian Mullen, just above a point per game. That's pretty close actually to historically where he had about a point per game, if I'm not mistaken. Some people maybe a little low. Gilbert Perreault, there's Don Luce, 14th overall. So, I mean, he still had a pretty good, pretty productive season, but again, he would have had below a point per game from, I want to say, the final 26 or 28 games. And again, he already had 5 or 6. He had like 7 goals, I think, after 3 or 4 games. So, chances are, again, a full 80 game schedule, it's not going to look that outrageous. Babbage kind of slowed over the stretch. I sort of thought he might. He and Al Secord actually as well. Secord, I think, is down here a little further. Yeah, 27th overall, 28 points. So again, I think defensively, at least some of these teams. Some of these players in the 80s actually who enjoyed outstanding numbers, like Paul McLean, who had 40 plus goals, 40 or a few more than it, and 101 points in 1985 with Winnipeg. Well, when you think of some of the opposition that Winnipeg would have been up against in 1985 80s hockey, there wouldn't have been too many teams the caliber of the 70 Canadians, which they beat twice anyway, and the Rangers, and just teams like that. So some really good competition here, I think, might have lowered the production of some of these names. And again, given a full season, maybe Joe Sakic picks it up in the goals department. There he is with 29 points, but only 4 of them being goals. Bobby Rousseau, of course. I'm trying to think of a third finalist, actually, for the inaugural Bobby Rousseau Award. I'm going to nominate Don Luce, Bobby Rousseau for his own award. And I don't know, maybe Tim Waters of Winnipeg. I thought about Laurie Boschman, but he did have a pretty good season in 1985, so this is not anything out of the ordinary to what he would have done. At one point earlier in the season, though, he was hotter and, on a bit of a... more of a torrid pace, I guess, where he would have, averaged out to higher points per game and goals per game, but not at this point. There you have it. So number 35, I basically went until someone from Los Angeles got into the scoring race. So there's Dan Maloney, tops for the Kings there, the 75 Kings, with 27 points there in 32 games, 10 of them being goals. The Buffalo Ricks, each with 27 and 14 and 15 goals, respectively. McNabb with 24. Actually, another thing I have to do is go through and see most goals and most assists. McNabb's 24 has to be up there. Sakic has 25. Perreault has 28. He'd be tied with Blake Dunlop, I guess. Oh, no, Federico with 30. So I guess I just kind of figured it out right now. No one has more than Federico with 30. Perreault, I guess, and Dunlop tied with 28 there each. And but McNabb with 24, this was a bit of a surprise in terms, I think, of how many points. He had a decent year that year, throwing 83. Probably a little past... his offensive prime. I could be mistaken, though, but just the 4 goals there. And leading, actually, with the highest number of goals was Rick Middleton with 24 in 32 games. That projects to 60 over an 80-game schedule. So, anyway, there you have it. That's the season in review. This was my second full regular season. Again, this is a what-if regular season. But again, the other one was 180 games. This was 192. So I've now done 372 regular season games with the game Mike Owens Quick Play Pro Hockey. And so if you add postseason games from the other project, random exhibitions, one-offs, just some other games that I've done with this just for fun, I've played this game well over 400 times now. And anyway, there you have it. And again, very much looking forward to the postseason, where the plan is, I'm probably not going to show too much of the first round other than for the game ones. I am going to try a quadruple header. I've not heard of, elsewhere on YouTube of anyone. I'm sure it's been done. You Google something and everything's been done before enough times. But I mean, I've not really seen it elsewhere, like on YouTube or wherever, somebody trying to quadruple header. So I'm going to try it because, again, I think it's a quick enough game if I just shut up and get to it with all four of the quarterfinal matchups, that first round, game one, and hope to see you there. Anyway, all right, thanks. Cheers, thanks, and bye for now.